Greetings from Las Vegas and welcome to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Thursday night. Glad to be representing EOG. The three letters stand for Ion Gaming. EOG.com, a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If it's a Thursday night, it means Ed Jones is our featured guest. Ed comes to us from the Philadelphia area. EdTheStatMan is his handle. It's both his website, EdTheStatMan.com, and his Twitter handle, @EdTheStatMan. He is a stats guy. Studied mathematics at LaSalle University, knows football and basketball very well, and once worked courtside with the Philadelphia 76ers. We'll ask him about that a little bit later in the program. Ed, good evening and welcome to the show.
John, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Good to have you back. You've been solid for us the past month or so. I know you were 2-1 last week with your 3 NFL selections, copied the record of the previous Thursday night. And I remember a couple of weeks ago asking you for your portfolio at the website. The bottom line was, I think, 15 units at the time. Where are you at right now?
I'm at about a little bit over 20 units going into this week, 20.25 units. Actually, at one point early on, we were in the negative overall for all sports, but it's been a good September and October. Once we got past the first few weeks of college football and NFL, and that's when you kind of get current form. When you get that current form in there, it makes it a lot easier to pick some winners. Did
you have a wager on the Thursday night football game between the Denver Broncos and the San Diego Chargers? The final score, Denver 35, San Diego 21.
Yeah, I had small wagers on the Chargers and the under. I thought it was just going to be a lot tighter, lower-scoring game. These teams usually play lower-scoring games, but Denver really exceeding a lot of expectations, definitely exceeding my expectations. And it looks like all of a sudden now this week, this is the new team to beat. It seems like every week we have one of these teams to beat in the NFL, and they get crowned Super Bowl champs. It was Seattle early after the first week, after they beat Green Bay. And then Cincinnati was mixed in there for a while as they were the team to beat. And now we have Denver. And, it's going to be the talk of the week leading up to the hype to the New England game next week.
This Broncos team, a lot better than they were last season, a Broncos team that lost in the Super Bowl to Seattle. They're both better offensively and defensively. Peyton Manning looks even sharper than he did last season. He tailed off the second half of last season, I thought, but now the Broncos 6-1 riding high, and they've got some outstanding wide receivers. We saw Emmanuel Sanders, a free agent pickup from the Pittsburgh Steelers last season in the offseason. He scored 3 touchdowns today. Peyton Manning with an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, that's amazing because Emmanuel Sanders wasn't even the top guy in Pittsburgh. He was second, probably third wide receiver in Pittsburgh. All of a sudden, gets to Denver, gets hooked up with Peyton Manning, and now he's scoring touchdowns left and right. You would think Eric Decker, who had a great year the last couple of years, all of a sudden he leaves and goes to the Jets. Really can hardly get open for the Jets. And it's kind of like the system, the Peyton Manning system is kind of like overshadows and makes mediocre wide receivers very good.
Oh, and what he does at the line of scrimmage is just incredible. I thought Phil Simms did a nice job tonight on the telecast, really laying out Manning's strengths. And let's say also that he was going up against a depleted San Diego team, shorthanded in the secondary. It's never good when you're starting cornerbacks are missing, and it's a real trouble when you're going up against the greatest quarterback in NFL history, arguably the greatest quarterback in NFL history. I think when all is said and done, even though he only has 1 Super Bowl title right now, Peyton Manning, just his skill set, his size, the way he manages a game, it's hard to think of a quarterback better than Peyton Manning.
Yeah, if you did make a key point, though, in your discussion a few minutes ago when you discussed how Peyton Manning tailed off in the second half of the season. And I did play Denver win total under, which is kind of like on the rocks right now. But, however, that's part of my handicap towards that is that Peyton Manning is almost pushing 40 years old. And, his offensive line has done very well keeping him pretty clean this year. But, as the season wears on and the hits start adding up, it'll be interesting to see if he can keep this pace up towards the end of the year like he did last year, because their schedule's a lot harder this year than it was last year, although they've they have maneuvered it. They've maneuvered it very nicely so far. I mean, they have some quality wins. I mean, you look back to that Indianapolis win. Now, the way the Colts have been playing, that's a quality win. Arizona, they gave them their only defeat. So we'll see. But looking at the quarterbacks, I mean, if you look at it from a technical aspect of it, someone who knows the game, managing the game, and also having the qualities of it, yeah, Peyton Manning would probably be the best overall. But from a winner standpoint, I would still have to go from all the quarterbacks I've seen with Joe Montana. It just seemed like that guy never lost in a big situation, and it's something that, Peyton Manning cannot say.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour, where we normally focus on sports gambling, a little sports talk in there on occasion. The argument between Manning and Montana is the greatest ever. Those are typically barroom arguments, Ed. We can't cash a bet with those type of opinions. We will be able to cash bets, let's hope, on opinions later in the show. Ed is going to go on record with his top play for Week 8 in the National Football League. I've got a play at college football that I really like, a total that I think is a little bit low, and I'm normally playing unders, but this one I like over the total. You mentioned Denver's resume this season. Also credit the Broncos for the win over the Niners. The Niners, one of the top teams in the NFL. Although teams like San Francisco and Seattle, teams that we saw last season compete in the NFC Championship game, they're not what they were last season. While the Broncos are surging, I would say if you're making power ratings in the NFL, Ed, you've got to have the Broncos not only at the top, but they could be clear by a couple of points now. At least that's what the market is saying. I mean, for Denver to be 7 over Frisco, I know it was a home game, and closed 9 over a San Diego team that had come in playing well. Again, shorthanded, but still, San Diego and Phillip Rivers were a nice entry in the first half of the season. This Denver team is highly rated.
After the last 2 weeks, absolutely. I mean, this is easily if you were making your power ratings, this is easily the number one team in the league. And there's really, at this point, not a clear-cut number 2. I thought the Chargers were playing well, and I thought their defense was improved, but they kind of got beat up by injuries, and they got picked apart the last 2 weeks. Arizona, really, with their quarterback situation, you just never know when Carson Palmer is going to blow up. And you have Dallas. Probably, if you look at Dallas, they're probably the number 2 team in the league right now. I mean, they are playing very well. They took care of the Giants last week. The Eagles, I mean, the market's still looking at them as a team that got lucky. They've gotten lucky over the first few games, because they lead the league in return touchdowns, and a lot of the stat modelers and the computer kind of guys discount that when looking at this. And it's funny, if you look back at the last all 6 games, the money came in against the Eagles in every game, yet they're covering the spread easily.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Ed Jones, a.k.a. Ed the Statman. We have a question from the Twitter world. We'll get to that on tonight's program. We'll get to it shortly, in fact. I discovered, Ed, reading the Gold Sheet this past week, there is a huge middle class. I like to follow the Gold Sheet power ratings. I think they do a good job in assessing numbers week to week. And I also follow Jeff Sagarin to see what he has and other computer models. But just for raw numbers, I take a look at the Gold Sheet every single week. And one thing about their power ratings in the NFL, it's pretty obvious that there's a huge middle class in the National Football League. There are the elite teams we've talked about, like Denver, San Francisco, Seattle. You'd have to put Green Bay in the mix as well. They're surging the past month or so. But the middle class, I counted 21 of the 30 NFL teams rated within a touchdown of one another, according to the Gold Sheet. There are the 3 dregs at the bottom: Tennessee, Oakland, and Jacksonville. We'll put them in the lower class, but the middle class is massive.
And that's the formula that the NFL is looking for. They want all the teams involved in the playoff hunt. It keeps all the casual fans involved. And this is the Pete Rozelle model of any given Sunday. And it's just the way the schedule formula is set up, where the best play the best, and the worst teams play the worst teams in each division. It's set up that way, and then the way the free agency is set up, and the way the draft is set up, and it's just the formula is working pretty much to perfection this year. I would think the formula, in the dream world for most of these NFL owners is to have the whole league at 8-8, just so everybody's involved in that last weekend of the year, and the TV ratings are high and the stadiums are packed and everyone's tuning in to see which of the 32 teams are going to make the playoffs.
Ed, I always chart the point spreads for the Super Bowl 49 to be played this year in Glendale, Arizona. The AFC, NFC, those numbers last couple of weeks had the NFC favored by 3 over the AFC, but now with Denver's surge, San Francisco and Seattle taking the step back. A number I saw earlier today was the AFC 1.5 over the NFC. That a lot of respect suddenly for this Broncos team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't really follow that as closely as a lot of people do, and I know that you do. But when I look at that, you kind of look at, what teams are built to get through the playoffs. And as you're saying that, like, the AFC is a 1.5 point choice right now, and it's obvious that the team the last few weeks that would get through the Super Bowl in the AFC would be the Broncos. And so you have to pick out, that's probably the cream of the crop in the AFC. You look at the NFC, what team is built to get through to the Super Bowl from the NFC? You look at all the teams right now, I mean, you have to look at the Green Bay Packers, the way they've been playing the last 3 or 4 weeks. So when I look at that line, I picture it as like, is Denver 1.5 points better than Green Bay on a neutral field in that situation? And after this tonight, I probably would say no. It'd probably be closer to 3. So maybe there is some value at this time in taking the AFC. But however, it's tough for me to even take those wagers seriously because Peyton Manning can go down for the season next week and then forget that bet.
Ed, the Statman, our featured guest, will be previewing Week 8 in the National Football League. Here's a question from Twitter. 22Dematic22 loves what Ed, the Statman, offers, not only on his website, but on this radio show on a weekly basis. He says he thinks Ed is one of the most impressive sports bettors around. The best way to tackle sports wagering is the question from Dematic22. Ed, what's your philosophy? What's your approach to gambling and winning on sports?
Well, first of all, you have to have experience. I've been at this a long time, and I have not won when I first started, and I don't think anybody has ever won when they first started. And the number one thing you need is persistence, and you need to just keep battling and find out what works and what doesn't work. And with regards to looking at, everybody always looks for the golden egg. Is there like the perfect system out there? And to me, I don't think so. There's no perfect way to go about this, and this is what makes this such a great industry, is that anybody can go at it their own way, and they can succeed. I mean, you could have the people that are just the advantage players and the market people, and I feel that, I respect them, and I think they can succeed just, playing the market, playing middles, understanding key numbers, and then also with regards to the handicappers, I feel that you can also succeed that way, and I've been doing well, the past few years at this, and I'm doing well again this year. I'm more of kind of like I would say more like 75% of the handicapper. I'm nowhere near close to the market reader that some of the guys that come on the show are, and I'm actually like learning a lot, picking up things from them. But you just have to keep your ears open. There's no such thing as a bad opinion in sports betting, is the way I look at it. The worst opinion in sports betting is the 50-50 opinion, the coin flip opinion. If you can find an opinion that's 45%, well, just do the opposite of what they're doing, and you're going to have a 55% opinion there. So it's kind of like, you like to say, follow everyone, but listen to no one. I mean, that's just great advice. I mean, do what works
the opposite.
for you.
Ed, the opposite. Listen to everyone, but follow no one.
I'm sorry. Listen to everyone, follow no one. There you go.
And
I think that's the best advice that you can give if you want to generalize what's the best approach to take at this.
What I like is I like to listen to everyone, not so much to adopt their strategies. Sometimes you hear the error in their ways. You know they're going bad with the thinking. I remember in last year's Super Bowl 48, every time I heard somebody give support for the Denver Broncos, the first words out of their mouth was Peyton Manning. They thought Manning was going to carry the Broncos to the Super Bowl title. 53-man roster. Seattle had the deepest roster in the league, and they were gelling at the right time. I didn't like the AFC Championship game between Denver and New England. I loved the NFC Championship game between Seattle and San Francisco. That, to me, was a football game. That was a productive game, one that was going to produce a solid winner. Whereas Denver, New England, everyone was open in that game. The receivers were running open in the secondary. In the Seattle-San Francisco game, no one was open. So I felt pretty confident, Seattle would get the money over Denver, and they did. That's not why I'm highlighting the game. The reason I'm highlighting it is the reason why the Broncos bettors failed is because they all leaned so heavily on Peyton Manning.
And that's the whole thing. Not only looking at one player, but looking at the whole year. I mean, if you looked at the power ratings the whole year, Denver was probably ahead of Seattle much of the year. Remember earlier that year they were like as high as 26-point favorites in the game against Jacksonville. So the computer guys had them rated, very highly constantly. But again, when you get to the playoffs, you talked about earlier about how Peyton Manning tailed off at the end of the year. This is where the artist can have the advantage over the computer guy, is that they can just take the short sample of what they're seeing over the previous few weeks. And if you look at the Saints, the Seahawks, they beat the Saints in the playoffs, and they beat the San Francisco, which was probably the third and fourth best team in the NFL last year going into that Super Bowl. So, this highlights all of the, different ways you can go about this. You can go about this as a modeler. You can go about this as a statistical guy. Or you can go about this as an artist, by someone who just sits there and watches game after game after game, reads newspapers, understands injuries. Or you can go through this as the line mover. The key with the analytics is you have to do what's best for yourself. You have to do what you feel is best. And the great part about analytics is everybody thinks of it as a science, but it's an art. You can take one game and one data set and hand it out to 10 different people and get 10 different answers. And who's to say who is right or who is wrong prior to the game? You would never know until the game plays out in front of you, and that's when you would know who was right or who was wrong. So it's kind of like, you have to do what you feel your strength is.
Oftentimes, Ed, that's why I want to hear a handicapper talk about a game that's just finished. It's one thing to preview, but I want to hear the review because I know what happened in the game according to my world, the way I see the game. You make a good point. 10 guys go watch the same game and come with 10 different opinions, but I want to hear what the handicapper saw. And I'm more impressed when I hear a handicapper see little things that I missed. Those are the kind of things that impress me, the authentic opinions, the angles that they may have, and then I could use those moving forward.
Yep.
We'll step aside and
Absolutely.
take a quick timeout right here. When we return, more with Ed the Statman. We'll ask him about Week 8 in the National Football League. He's going to give us his best bet in Week 8 in the NFL. I'll go on record with a play on the Ohio State-Penn State game. I follow the Big Ten closely. I think I've got a good angle on Ohio State's offense coming into this week. And we'll ask Ed about the World Series, Game 3 tomorrow at AT&T Park in San Francisco. The Giants to host the Royals' best-of-7 series tied at 1 game apiece. You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour.
There's no such thing as a sure thing, unless you're talking about Ion Gaming. Ion Gaming is a website dedicated to the hearts and minds of sports bettors everywhere. If you're looking for smart, sophisticated sports handicapping information and insight,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the latest news on the ever-changing landscape of Nevada's race and sportsbook industry,
go to EOG.com.
If you're looking for the most recent developments involving the worldwide sports betting scene with an emphasis on the leading sportsbooks in San Jose, Costa Rica,
go to EOG.com.
And finally, if you're looking to join an online community of sports gamblers where registration is free and the information is priceless,
go to EOG.com.
You get the idea. Why gamble on other sports betting websites when Ion Gaming is a sure thing?
And I love a sure thing.
Hi, this is Rick Alec, president of Sports Options. Sports Options is a sports information tool designed to give sports bettors of all types the necessary edge needed to improve their bottom line. With Sports Options, you'll never lay a bad number again. We provide you with live odds from the leading sports books in the world, from Costa Rica to Curacao, London to Las Vegas, and everywhere in between. Sports Options also provides the fastest and most accurate injury information, lightning-quick score updates, and game analysis from 30-year handicapping veteran Mark Simons. We offer affordable services for players of all levels, starting at just $99 per month. To see which service best fits your needs, you can take advantage of our 7-day free trial. No credit card is needed. Just go to www.sportsoptions.com and click on the free trial link. I'm confident you'll be impressed with our product, and you'll find it the most complete and comprehensive on the market. In fact, if you don't like Sports Options after 30 days, we'll refund you 100% of your subscription costs, no questions asked. Go to sportsoptions.com for all the details or call 702-835-1743, and one of our friendly customer service representatives will be happy to help you. Sports Options, information you can bet on.
And we are back, the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with you on a Thursday night. Ed the Statman, our weekly guest on Thursdays. Always good to have Ed contribute to the program. As you can tell, the smart, sophisticated Ed Jones contributing to the show. I like when Ed comes not only with opinions, but with his commentary as well, with his theories about sports and sports betting. Ed, I mentioned in the first segment of the show you once worked courtside for the Philadelphia 76ers. Explain.
I got the internship when I was in LaSalle University. I got an internship for the 76ers as a statistician, majoring in mathematics. The school came in and came to the mathematics department and asked if anybody was interested in joining the Harvey Pollack as a Philadelphia 76ers statistician. If that wasn't fit for me, I don't know what was. I followed Harvey's career in Philadelphia my whole life. I lived about 3 blocks from the sports complex, and I was able to walk there every single night to watch the Phillies or watch Eagles practice or go to the Sixers games. And so it was just like a match made in heaven. I sent a letter to Harvey, and he brought me in. And I walked in, he told me to sit down and started giving me some stat sheets to break down. It wasn't even an interview. It was just like, get to work as soon as I walked in. It was pretty cool.
What year are we talking about?
This was in the mid-'90s. This was, I would like to say 95 or 96. I think it was like 95, 96, 97, the years that I was in college.
Here's my earliest memories of the Philadelphia 76ers. When they'd come to town in Chicago against the Bulls, you had to arrive early to watch the pregame warm-ups because Dr. J and Daryl Dawkins, they put on a show, for the fans with the dunking. Does that predate your experience with the Sixers?
My first ever Sixers game, I'll never forget it. It was about 1980 or 81. It was the Sixers against the Seattle Supersonics. And Dr. J was doing his thing, dunking, running, jumping, hitting J's. But all of a sudden, he was getting out-dueled by Jack Sikma, who was on the Seattle Supersonics. And I never heard of this guy before in my young age. And this guy was just hitting J's left and right, putting some moves inside. And I think the Sixers ended up losing that game. Sikma went off, and I remember that. I was like, wow, somebody's actually out there better than Dr. J. I couldn't believe it. It was like the biggest eye-opener in my life in my first ever basketball game. But I was hooked ever since.
Sikma, a product of Illinois Wesleyan, I know because that's my home state. Sikma had a decent NBA career, nothing like Dr. J's, obviously, but Father Time is relentless. It can be tough, and I think that's one of the storylines this NBA season, Ed, is how aging stars like Kobe Bryant, Dirk Nowitzki, and Tim Duncan will battle Father Time.
It looks like there's only one that's still lasting is Tim Duncan, especially with the year he had last year. Dirk Nowitzki looks like he's finally tailing off. Kobe Bryant's coming down to the end. Paul Pierce now is only going to be his third team in 3 years. So it looks like that, Tim Duncan's probably the last of the major players dating from last century. I just read that Steve Nash is finally out for the season already, and it didn't even start yet, and that'll probably end his career. So it's like, it's in, LeBron is now the torchbearer of the NBA, and his counterpart would be Kevin Durant, who's also going to be out for the season. So, out early for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. So it's going to be a tough go here in the early going because there's just too many key injuries here. So especially with the Pacers, you're really going to have to sit back and kind of analyze the Pacers and how they're going to play without Paul George this year. You're going to have to analyze Oklahoma City without Durant. I mean, these big losses, and it's just, teams that were consistently good over the past few years all of a sudden are going to struggle early on, and they're going to see where the lines are going to come out and how the odds makers are going to overcompensate for them or not. And conversely, now you have Chicago, who's seemed to be good again last year with 49 wins without Derrick Rose yet again, and now Derrick Rose is back in play for the Bulls. So that's another team that you're going to probably have to sit back and watch a few games and see how they react with Rose in the lineup.
Opening night for the NBA season this Tuesday, October 28th. We are going to have an NBA contest at EOG.com. Still finalizing the details. We expect to debut it November 1st. The competition will begin December 1st. We need get our ducks in a row, but November 1st we should be taking entries. What I like about the competition, $100 to enter the competition, a 125% payback. Isn't that the key to gambling? We'll try to take in $4,000 and pay out $5,000. Should be a lot of fun. Members of the EOG community. Ed has committed to the event. So too has Dink. He's going to take a run at it. We'll try to keep the format simple. We did lay something out a couple of weeks ago. It got a little too complicated. We'll have a simpler format. I think the fewer the rules, the better in these type competitions. A couple hundred plays over the course of a season. Play them anytime you'd like, at any point you want, and that should pretty much determine the winner of the event. And in terms of prize breakdown, I always like to weight the winner, pay the winner the lion's share of the purse. After all, you don't want to pay down too many spots, 6, 9, 12 spots. Instead, probably just a first, second, and third place award. But we'll have more details on that NBA competition at EOG.com in less than a week. Ed the Statman is here to talk NFL football. Let's get a quick comment, though. First, Game 3 of the World Series. It goes tomorrow night in San Francisco. The Giants take on the Royals. Hudson against Guthrie at Pinnacle right now. Hudson is a $1.22 favorite. The total is 7. Ed, have you made a play in Game 3 of the World Series?
No, I have not. I have not. I actually butchered the first 2 games. I started out with the Royals in Game 1. After the line shot up on the Royals in Game 2, I turned around and backed the Giants. I thought that they were, I thought it was a decent price to get the Giants plus in the situation. So they'd lose the first 2 games of the World Series. I'm at plus a little bit over 9 units in the MLB playoffs this year. And most of that was from riding the Royals throughout the playoffs. So I'm probably either going to dial down my bets the rest of the way unless I see something really incredible. But I'm thinking I might just take my 9 units and go home at this point because the Giants are too difficult of a read for me. I just can't get a good feel for them. I do love the Royals. I do love their bullpen, but I'm not too happy about, they're going to have the pitcher batting here in games 3, 4, and 5, which means, some of these relievers, you just can't run them out there 7, 8, and 9 now because their turns will be coming up in the order, and that takes another hit away, another batter away from their offense, and they're pretty, they've been offensively challenged for most of the year. So to me, it's a very difficult series, the rest of the way.
I appreciate the honesty that you butchered games 1 and 2. I was just the opposite. I nailed both games 1 and 2. Funny how that works sometimes, Ed. Winning begets winning, especially in a series. We see it in the NBA with the zigzag theory. Because I was on Bumgartner in game 1, I had no problem turning around, betting the Royals with a quote-unquote desperate spot. They needed that win after the loss, Kauffman Stadium, and I thought they'd get it, too, behind young Ventura. I had no problem betting against Peavy. I wanted to bet on Mad Bum, and I did. In fact, that was a first 5-inning bet, not the full game. But then I turned around and bet Ventura. I had no problem, and laid a good price, too. I laid $1.11 early in the betting cycle. So, I saw numbers as high as $1.45 on game 2 in the end. But funny how that works, Ed. Sometimes, one winner leads to another if you're seeing it well.
Yeah, well, I had a good MLB playoff, so I really can't complain. My goal was to make about 10 units anyway, so, if I go home now with my 9 plus units, I'd be very happy with the way everything went about it. So I'm either going to dial it down and pull out maybe like a quarter unit or a half unit if I do see something I like. But I also do have NBA key numbers if you want to go over that now, or you want to save it for another week.
No, because the season will be underway when we talk to you next. And Ed was good to us. Remembered in the preseason and in the NFL regular season, he gave us key numbers for both. That was a fascinating exercise. Talked about the difference between games landing 1 and 2 in the preseason compared to the regular season. NBA regular season key numbers. I'm listening.
All right. I got to look back over the last 20 years. I've been following it. It's been over 22,000 games in the NBA. And the number one key number out there, drum roll please, it is 7. 7 is the most common win margin at 6.7% of the time. And if you look at the 7, it's pretty obvious. I mean, why the 7 is the key number. Let's go down to the end game, and 7 is a 3-possession game now. With the 3-pointers, 6 is still a 2-possession game, and that's pretty much when the teams are going to stop fouling in the NBA. It's not like college basketball where teams start hacking away down 9 with 2 minutes left, hoping to get some kids going to the line missing some free throws. In the NBA, the average is a little bit over 70% at free throw shooting, but then at the end game, most of the teams have their best free throw shooters on the floor, so you're talking about the average at end games probably up to 80 to 85%, so players aren't going to go to the line and miss. So when we get down to that end game, a 7-point game is pretty much in the books within 30 seconds or less in the NBA, and that's why teams don't even bother fouling anymore up 7, and that's why games land 7 majority of the times. Second most common number is the 5. It's funny because 7, 5, 6, and 8, they're the 4 most common numbers, and they're all over 6%. The 7 lands 6.7% of the time, and the 5 is also pretty close at 6.6% of the time. All these numbers are grouped together over 6% of the time, and again, these are all numbers that are either 2 or 3 possession games with the 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then the 5th most important number is the number 2. That is the 5th most important number at 5.8%. That's the most common occurrence. And again, when a game comes down to the end or goes to overtime, most of the time, 2-point game is when the teams kind of like play for the last shot and play for either the tie or the win. So, it makes a lot of sense as to why these numbers lay the way they do. The one number that you may think is important, which is actually not, is the number 1. That's actually down there in the 11 or 12 range because, it's lower than the 10 and lower than the 11. And because the 1 point, when teams are kind of have a 1-point lead, they're on the seesaw, and a lot of times that you're constantly going back and forth, and when the team misses at the end, when they're down 1, they'll quickly foul because of the way the NBA rules are, where you can move the ball up to half court after a timeout. They're still fouling even less than 2 seconds down 1 with the missed shot at the end. So that's why games really don't land on 1 as frequently as they do the other numbers between 2 and 10.
Ed, the Statman, with some valuable information tonight, a 20-year study covering more than 22,000 NBA games. The key number, the most frequent number that lands in the NBA is 7, barely over 5, followed by 6, 8, and 2. Have you done a similar study for college basketball?
No, I have not. I don't really have good enough data in college basketball because it's hard. For me to do proper statistical studies, you really need the data on the 300 teams every year for you to get it. And a lot of these people, they pick and choose what conferences they're looking at, or they'll only look at teams that are on the board versus teams off the board. And for me, the data integrity of that is it's just not good. It's just not not the right way to look at things. You really need to look at all 300 Division I teams to be able to come up with decent statistical studies, and I just don't have the access to that data at this time.
What about totals, NBA totals? Have you done any studies in terms of point distributions?
I did not, but I can, and we'll have that for next week.
Sounds good. I'm wondering about scoring, if it's up or down in the NBA. As I think of last season, I know in the NFL, the scoring's up over the last 4 or 5 years. We talked about baseball this season, how the run production was way down, a 22-year low. I'm wondering about scoring trends in the NBA. Any quick thoughts before you look at the numbers?
Well, I did know scoring is higher than it was. If you just look over the last 5-year period, it's probably higher than the previous 5-year period. It's definitely higher over the last decade, just the way that the rules are set up, and they're really calling a lot of fouls with the clutching and the grabbing in the NBA, and especially after it hit the low point in the late 90s, where teams were barely getting over 80, and a lot of the times, especially in the playoffs, and they really wanted to stop that kind of basketball.
And the emphasis, too, on three-point shooting, Ed. I think we've seen that skyrocket in the last 5 years or so. The way the Golden State Warriors play basketball, where they launch from beyond the arc. Some teams can really use that three-point shot as a weapon.
Yeah, if you hit 33% of your three-pointers, you're actually better than shooting 48% of your two-pointers. So for teams that don't use the three-pointer to their advantage, they're going to be at a disadvantage.
Ed, NFL Week 8. Let's run down the games. Stop me when you have your best bet, if you would. The top game on the card comes early, a 6:30 a.m. Pacific time start. Wembley Stadium in London, England. Atlanta and Detroit. The Lions, a 3.5 minus $1.15 at Chris right now. The total is 46.5. Your thoughts on the Lions and Falcons playing across the pond?
Yeah, I usually stay away from these neutral site games. I don't like them at all. They just don't fit into the historical schedule analysis that you like to do. These are kind of like, they call them business trips, but you're going to another country, and there's a lot of appearances and a lot of other things that need to be done along with just your typical work week in the NFL. And so I don't really get involved in these games at all. And looking at this game, if this game were on in either in Detroit or Atlanta, Falcons have been awful this year. The Lions have been playing very well. Their defense has been very solid. They pulled out a great win last week against the Saints and pulled it out. And I remember, I think that a couple before the season, I think I was on a show with the Viejo Dinosaur. We were on the same show, and he talked about Detroit as a sleeper to win the NFC North, and I was thinking to myself as he was saying, I was like, come on, Green Bay's got this hands down, and wow, Detroit is playing. So I think this line's accurate, minus 3.5 on a neutral field, and it kind of shades you to, you have to pay a little bit of a price with the hook on the Lions. So I'm going to pass this game. We've highlighted his winning selections on the program. Let's also note that EdTheStatMan said the NFC North might be the weakest of the 8 divisions before the season started. Ed, you were down on teams like the Packers, Lions, Bears, and Vikings. Yeah, it was. The Vikings have been playing that well. The Bears, they're Jekyll and Hyde team. But with the NFC South, I thought that the Jaguars and the Titans would have been a lot better. I know we had that conversation. It looks like I'm losing that battle. Yeah, I thought the AFC South was weakest, although Indy is holding up the entire division. Houston took a step back, 3-4 on the season. Now their season may go the wrong direction. Tennessee and Jacksonville, they're just the dregs of the league. And so I would have to say the AFC South right now, the weakest of the 8 divisions, although the NFC South, with New Orleans stepping back, Carolina's not much 3-1, and they're leading that division. So the NFC South would be in the running too, I guess. Yeah, another division we would have thought of was probably the NFC East that would have struggled. But now they got 2 teams with only 1 loss, and they look like to be the best division in the NFL. Now that I think about it, Ed, in terms of divisions, I said the
AFC South would be the weakest at the beginning of the year. The NFC South doesn't look good. So both South divisions look weak. How about both West divisions? NFC West and AFC West, they were the strongest last year. I think they're the strongest again this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are strong, but we discussed this early on in the preseason that their win totals are going to be deflated because they have to beat up on each other all year.
Yes.
The AFC West has to play the NFC West, and so we talked about trying to pick out some unders in those divisions.
Yeah, the poor Rams and the poor Raiders, right? Having to look uphill all year long. What brutal schedules they have. Next in the rotation for Week 8 in the NFL, Tampa Bay home to Minnesota. The Bucs are 2.5-point favorites. The total is 42.5.
Yeah, Bucs coming off a bye and an absolute annihilation the week before. I thought this team would have better defense than they did. And again, I just don't understand. I mean, I know the Vikings are pretty bad, but the Buccaneers are favored yet again, and they have yet to even win a game outright in that situation. I would wait to let's see if I can pluck off a 3 here, and I would take the Vikings in this situation.
New England home to Chicago. The Patriots 6. The total 50.5.
Hey, you know what this reminds me? Remember a couple of weeks ago when everybody was burying the Patriots against the Bengals, and I come on and say, hey, not so fast here. The Patriots are still the Patriots, and they're gonna play well. Now it looks like this week's team that everybody absolutely is destroying is the Chicago Bears. And again, we have the good J, bad J situation. We had bad J against Carolina. We had good J against Atlanta. Now we have bad J against the Dolphins. And so I'm looking maybe at them Bears bouncing back here with good J. Patriots have a look ahead next week against the Broncos. Quite frankly, they're coming off a division game against the Jets on prime time, and they have the Broncos next week, and they get this little non-conference game sandwiched in here. And the way the blow-ups in the Bears locker room that we read about all week happened, I look for that team to come out a little bit more focused. I think the number's a little heavy here, and I would lean to the Bears.
Kansas City home to St. Louis. The Chiefs -7, -$1.15. The total 44.5.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams, wow. They beat up on Seattle last week. They pulled every trick out of the book. Fake punts in their own zone, fake punt returns, and they did all that, and they were able to week out a win against Seattle by 2 points. Now they go on the road against the Chiefs. Chiefs coming off the bye, and then a division upset of San Diego. I think this line's about right. I think Chiefs -7 is about a correct line, and I'm past this game.
Carolina home to Seattle. The 3-3 Seahawks favored on the road by 5. The total is 45. Seattle in danger of losing 3 straight games.
I remember last year, Seattle came to Carolina and scored 12 points against them, and what a difference a year has made. The Panthers' defense, they can't stop anybody. But again, I'm going to take it. I mean, this is back-to-back road games for Seattle. They had to travel to St. Louis. Now they got to come all the way across country to the south to face Carolina. There's something maybe going on in the locker room as they had to get rid of Percy Harvin. It's a big loss. I mean, that's not a small loss. And that showed up last week, where they had some problems moving the ball. I mean, Russell Wilson had to run for 100+ yards for them just to stay in that game. Carolina's coming off an embarrassing loss. I mean, they were spent last week. We talked about it after running up and down the field with Cincinnati the week before. I would lean to the Carolina here. I mean, this line keeps going up. And if this hits 6, I would take the Panthers. I may even take them still a 5.5. I'm not sure yet. I would lean to the Panthers.
Lean to the Panthers, okay. The New York Jets home to the Buffalo Bills. The Jets -3, -$1.05. The total is low at 40.
Yeah, Jets finally cover a game this year, right? Last week they finally cover a game, and now they turn around and they're favorites here at -3. I can't lay the 3 points with the Jets. Buffalo's 4-3, but they're kind of probably the weakest 4-3 I've seen. They took a last-minute win last week to beat up on the Vikings. To beat the Vikings 17-16. They're not really scoring points that much with Kyle Orton. I see this as the lowest total on the board of 41, which is kind of obvious the way these two offenses move the football. And Jets maybe a little bit of a downswing coming off of New England, where they had a chance to beat them and got a field goal blocked at the end last week. I would pace this game. Both these teams are kind of fades on my radar right now.
Miami on the road against Jacksonville. The Jags coming off their first victory of the season. Miami a 6-point favorite. The total is 42. A tip of the cap to you, Ed the Statman. You took my money. I liked Cleveland over Jacksonville. You said no, Jacksonville was the live dog there.
Yeah, I just thought, Cleveland, after beating Pittsburgh last week, 2 weeks ago, they were going to get caught up in a kind of a letdown situation. It's still a young team in Cleveland, and so Jacksonville had them right where they wanted them. And now you can get the Dolphins also coming in off a road underdog win here, and now going down to actually traveling north to Jacksonville to play this game. But I would actually lean to Jacksonville again. I've been talking about this since the preseason, that Blake Bortles is I think he's the real deal, and he's just been getting better and better every week. And I like what they're doing now with the former Michigan quarterback. He ran for over 100 yards last week. And it's nice to see a kid have that much common sense where, they told him, if you want to stay in the NFL, change positions. And he really worked hard last year to become a running back, and that's starting to pay off. And it looks like a decent weapon there between Bortles and Herons on the outside, and now you have a legitimate running back maybe in Robinson. And Miami really hasn't stopped many people in the run game this year anyway. So I would lean to Jacksonville again in another slugfest kind of game.
Tennessee home to Houston. Houston on the road -3, -1.15. The total is 41.5. The Titans announced yesterday that Zach Mettenberger, the 6th-round choice out of LSU, will make his first ever NFL start.
Yeah, if you've been listening to the show since the preseason here, I've been calling that from the doors to get, Jake Locker is not any good, and let's get this kid from LSU in here for Tennessee and just see what he has. This is a wasted year anyway for the Titans, and so let's see if this kid's the future or not, and it's finally going to happen. So I'm actually pretty excited to watch this game and to see how Mettenberger reacts. I'm not going to back him at all against that Texans defense. That Texans defense is brutal, and other than the kind of a 2-minute lapse Monday night at the end of the first half, and they've been playing well. They've been leaking a little bit lately, but the line looks a little bit short. I would lean to Houston here and fade Mettenberger in his first start. But I'm probably just going to watch the game and take notes.
Cincinnati home to Baltimore. The Ravens on the road, a 1-point favorite. The total 45.5.
Yeah, the Ravens are really being world beaters all of a sudden lately, and now they go into Cincinnati, who has struggled, lost 3 in a row, and coming off a shutout. And now they're down to 3-3. But with regards to the Bengals, if this line keeps going up, I'm going to have to jump in and play the Bengals. 3 weeks ago, they were talking about the Bengals were the best team in the NFL. They were Super Bowl contenders and everything. But they battle the Ravens tight every time. It's a division game, and the money looks like it's pouring in on Baltimore. And Baltimore struggles on the road in the division. This is a tough division. They struggled against Cleveland a few weeks ago on the road. They always struggle against, Pittsburgh. That's always a battle when they play on the road. And again, in Cincinnati here, it's just going to be one of these knockdown, drag-em-out games. And if the line goes up any higher, I'm going to have to get involved with Cincinnati and the Bengals.
You're listening to the EOG Sports Hour. John Kelly with Ed Jones, a.k.a. Ed the Statman. His website is EdTheStatMan.com. His Twitter handle's @EdTheStatMan. He has flipped the script on the sports advisory business. I like what he does at his website. All his plays are free of charge. No cost for the selections. You can go to his website, follow him on Twitter. You can get all of his plays. He's up more than 20 units thus far since the inception of the website. Here's where the pay service kicks in. At $19.99 a month, you can read his analysis, his commentary on sports and sports betting. Things like the 20-year study of NBA point differentials, how games land, in the 22,000 game study. I mean, where else are you going to get that kind of information? Ed the Statman, good with what he produces. You can go to EdTheStatMan.com and find out more. About 5 minutes remaining in the program, still 5 games to get to, plus his top play on Week 8 in the NFL. And if you'll give me a minute at the end of the program, Ed, I'll relay to our listeners my favorite play in college football. Here's a game you should have some insight. Arizona home to Philadelphia. Ed comes to us from the Philly area. Arizona, a 2.5-point favorite, -2.5, -$1.15 to be precise at Chris, the best sports book in the world. The total on the game is 48.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you see a one-loss team at this point of the season averaging over 30 points a game come in as an underdog against Arizona? I mean, Arizona's defense has been playing very well this year, and it's going to be a great matchup between the Arizona defense and the Philadelphia offense. I would have to lean to the Eagles. I mean, it's just hard to pass up a team that scores over 30 points a game and to take points in any situation. So I would have to lean to Philadelphia here.
Pittsburgh playing host to Indianapolis. The Colts on the road, -3, -$1.15. The total is 49. This is the game that produces your top play.
Yeah, in this situation, I mean, the Colts have been playing great. They've won 5 straight games straight up and against the spread. Andrew Luck's probably the league leader for MVP in the NFL this year. But going up against Pittsburgh, you know, they're going to be outside on the road in a tough environment. And I like looking at Pittsburgh here. If you look at the road favorites, you know, 3 or more points coming in off double digits straight up and against the spread wins, it's been a 66% go against over the last 10 years or so in the NFL. It's 5-1 already this year if you went against the situation. And so I'm looking at Pittsburgh. I mean, they had that big win on Monday night, kind of injected some life back into the team. And now this is a key win. This is a win that can kind of turn the season around here in this game if they can beat up Indianapolis. I don't think Indianapolis is kind of like a physical enough team yet on the defensive side of the ball to be able to hang with Pittsburgh. The running game is still non-existent, and you have to be able to run the ball well. I think that's one of the Steelers' weaknesses, is to be able to run the ball on them, and the Colts cannot do that. So I look for Pittsburgh, and I can't believe the line's 3 here. I think it's an overlay, and I'm going to take the 3 with the Pittsburgh Steelers in this situation.
Best bet, Week 8 in the NFL from Ed the Statman, betting number 272, the Pittsburgh Steelers +3 over the Indianapolis Colts. Keep an eye on the clock, Ed. Tell us about the last 3 games on the card. Cleveland home to Oakland, Cleveland 7, the total 43.
Yeah, I would have to lean to Oakland in this situation, only because Cleveland, again, young team, big favorites here at 7 points. You know, coming into the season, they were probably about a 4 or 5 win team or was a 5 or 6 win team on the win totals, and they're really exceeding expectations. The Raiders are still, I mean, they're playing hungry, they're battling, and this is one of these teams that still need their first win. So, you know, that they're going to come to play, and I would lean to the 7 in Oakland in this situation.
Sunday night football, New Orleans home to Green Bay. The Saints 1.5-point favorites. The total high 55.5.
Yeah, I'm actually amazed that Green Bay came as an underdog in this situation. I know the Saints, you know, the home field advantage really kicks in. I mean, I can't remember the last time the Saints have really played poorly at home, and they're just a different team on the road than they are at home. But Green Bay's playing incredible. I mean, the last 3 times these teams have played, they've averaged 70 points per game. So if you compare that to the total, it kind of looks a little bit low. But I would have to kind of lean to the under in this situation because the Saints' offense just ain't clicking. And if they do get into a shootout with the Packers, they're not going to be able to keep up touchdown for touchdown in this situation. So I'd kind of lean to Green Bay and the under here.
Monday Night Football, Dallas home to Washington. The Cowboys 10, the total 49.5. One-word answer, Cowboys or Redskins?
I'd say the Redskins, double digits. Dog in this series is 28-10 against the spread since 1995. It's a rivalry game. I would take Washington.
EdTheStatMan.com. Visit the website for more of his content. College football selection for me on Saturday. Ohio State on the road against Penn State. Earlier this week, we heard EOG contributor Drink Your Milkshake made a case for the favorite Ohio State. I like over 52. Urban Meyer against James Franklin. Ohio State's offense has been unbelievable this year. They started slow, 55 plays against Navy, then 69 in a loss against Virginia Tech, 87 plays against Kent, 101 plays against Cincinnati. They scored 52 points against Maryland in a Big Ten game. Last week, 56 against Rutgers. Urban Meyer lays it on. I'll take over 52, Ohio State and Penn State. Thanks for listening.